And gals, this is BL Blankenship with an Indie Comics Underground kind of episode, live rant, whatever you would exactly want to call it. So not like a lot of things. I'll tell you, so many of these live cast things just aggravate me horribly. The reason why is because it's just like, ooh, hang on. I did not mean to do what I just did. I just posted something public that's a bad ideal, probably for this. Yeah. I want people to go and see the video. I don't want to like publicly just put it out there where people can go ahead and jump on who? So I guess that this is just viewable right now on YouTube, unless I do something differently, kind of sort of messing around on that end to try and share the link and make that work. Hang on, hopefully it won't do anything too wild. Just put it out there where people can go ahead. Yeah. So I don't know if you could hear any bleed through or whatever, but that was me clicking over onto where the thing is, and I'm just going to go ahead and try and do this. This is all live, by the way, so completely technologically lacking. Yeah, so here I am. I said a little bit ago that I was going to go ahead and talk about a few things, do a couple of hot takes and everything. You know, I'm not most people. That's the understatement of the year. If something's too fashionable, too trendy, whatever, I tend to go in the opposite direction of that. I wore PF flyers because I said that Converse are too mainstream. It's got to be when rock stars wear them. So yeah, that's the way that I like what I like. I don't go with the crowd. I think that most people do. I think a lot of people that if you have a popular person that has a lot of charisma, that they're up front. And I say that in every possible sense, in fashion and sports and politics, whatever. You've got somebody with a lot of charisma up front. It doesn't matter left, right, whatever. That you've got people that just like a baby bird, just eat it in and all that. Not everybody, hopefully not you, the audience. Smart people ask the question, why? Um, I'd say that when I was a substitute teacher. So yeah, all kinds of stuff. Anyway, I listened to a podcast recently. I listened to a lot of comic book podcasts, by the way, and it had Joe Quesada on it. Listened to quite a bit of Joe Quesada here recently. He was at Nirvana Comics, did a great job. He's got a wonderful personality. A lot of people really like him and take to him, and it's no wonder. He comes off really sweet. I had heard him talking about when he was there, and Mike Millar was there with him, and they were there at Marvel, and it's when he did something that, in a lot of sense, is a very good, brilliant, even marketing decision, and that was making Spider-Man and Wolverine part of the Avengers. You get why that's good, because you're kind of doing an A-team thing there. You're saying, let's just take all the characters that people like, that people resonate with, that they'll flock to. That a lot of that's going on in comics, by the way, right now, because they've got so many crossovers. So it's like, if we could have Batman and Spawn in the same comic, if we can have Spider-Man and Predator in the same comic, you've got two things that people are going to show up for, and you put them together. The very first comic to do that was Spider-Man, Superman, for the whole crossover thing. But let's go ahead and let's do this thing like that, as a fun thing, but not just a fun thing, as a money making kind of thing, right? So they're in the meeting. He told the story, and it would be like candy to me if Tom Brevoort were to hear this and like say anything about it. I would love to hear his take on there. I know that he's a really sharp guy, like a computer. People that know him say that he knows so much about comic history and all that. And Tom Brevoort was the opposition to them wanting to do that. According to Joe Quesada in his story, he said Tom Brevoort stood up at that meeting, either physically or metaphorically, but he said Spider-Man and Wolverine would never do that. They would never join the Avengers because of how they are as characters. I want to take a minute to look at this now. Let's examine this. And he talked about how Wolverine was a loner. He talked about how Spider-Man, how he worked alone, how he operated alone. And he said, and for that reason, they would never do that, right? And basically, the mob joined hands, and in unison, they stood against Tom Brevoort. And Tom Brevoort walked out, stormed out mad as a wet hen, right? And he came back later and he said, well, you know what? You're right that these characters can do whatever you want, however you write them. And anything and everything that anybody out there that reads comics complains about, it's that mentality that is what you stand against, that you say comics have completely been destroyed for whatever reason, because people feel like anything that they want to do with a character that they can go ahead and do. So essentially, in this story, Tom Brevoort wasn't just right one time, but he was right both times in what he says. And depending on your view and your perspective of it, one of those times, no matter who you are, if you care about this, he was right more than the other time. Um, I I tend to think, as a writer, as somebody that feels like story matters, um, as a writer that writes so well that people have come up to me and said, "You're my favorite writer." Um, as a writer that myself and others feel like write stuff that's so good that it's worth coming back for more of, and there's plenty of writers like that. Um, I feel like consequences to actions in stories matter. I feel like motivations in stories matter. Um, I agree with Stan Lee. Stan Lee had said to Joe Quesada, as he told in one of his other interviews, by the way, I have ears like a fox and eyes like a hawk, and a memory like a woman. Yeah, I remember things well, a lot of things well, not numbers usually, but Stan Lee had said in this interview, or in this talk that he had privately had on the phone with Joe Quesada. He talked about Spider-Man, and he said if Spider-Man was there and he was up on a rooftop and he shot his web out, and you could see this like beautiful picture of New York City, and it goes to a faraway building and he swings out. He said that's a good scene, right? He's talking about what makes a superhero. And Joe's like, yeah, and he said no. He said um, the thing about Spider-Man is, what is his motivation? Who does he love? What does he care about? It's about getting to the person inside of the Spider-Man suit. Otherwise, it's just a blue and red costume, quote unquote. That was Stan Lee that had said that. And Stan Lee was right. If you don't have this hard line consistency with who is Spider-Man in here, who is Spider-Man up here? How does he think? How does he feel? Who does he love? What are his reactions to things, whether it be him or whether it be Daredevil or whether it be Batman or whoever? Then it doesn't matter. Then it's just some empty husk of a character. It doesn't matter if it's the Punisher or who it is. It doesn't matter if it's Spawn. It doesn't matter if you can't get into here. Who are they at the very heart of who they are? That's why some of the early Smallville stuff was so good. In the first season of Smallville, which, I mean, it was so rock solid. You had it where Clark Kent had his powers taken away by this guy because they got shot with the lightning, and there was some kryptonite, and it created a transfer of powers, and the one was called Superboy, even by the local paper that the Chloe character had went ahead and made. And he asked Clark in their face-off scene with Clark like a normal person. He says, "What would you do if you had powers like this?" And Clark Kent says to him, who's the embodiment of who Superman is, he says, "I would stop people like you." That's who he's a hero in here. It doesn't matter if he has all those powers and all that stuff. if he didn't have the morality, if he didn't have the mindset that he has, he would not be the character Superman. He would be like a bastardization of that character. So I fully stand by this, that Tom Brevoort, whereas he was right both times when he went ahead and said, hey, that these characters would never do something like this. It's completely inconsistent and it's a fool thing to do. Tom Brevoort was right. When Tom Brevoort said, hey, you know what? You can go ahead and you can make them do whatever you want to make them do because you're the writer. Again, Tom Brevoort was right. He was never wrong in these situations. Here's the deal. I believe that Tom Brevoort was more right. It's like a chess game, right? There's a bunch of moves that you can make, but they're not all the same, and some moves are better than the others, right? Some will lead you to disaster, some will lead you to rough places, and other ones will lead you to a smooth, clean, decisive win. Okay? Um, yeah, the Avengers took off. When I think of the Avengers, we're just talking about me and how I think of them, right? I was born in 1981. So you're thinking about when I get into comics and all that. So you would really be talking like more 90s, kind of stuff, like late 80s, 90s kind of things going on. I mean, I would get them in Big Lots. They were in all the stores, all that kind of thing going on. I remember when Spawn came out and it was in the media play, and I rollerbladed down there, rollerbladed inside of the media play store. We would line up to play Tekken on the brand new PlayStation. All this stuff. I remember playing the Nintendo when it was out in the Sears, and they had a time limit on all the games and all that type of thing. My older sister had an Atari 2600, all that. That was my experience growing up. Okay. So when I think of the Avengers, I think of the Avengers with Wolverine and with Spider-Man, because that had been brought into that. And I completely get, and I totally agree that marketably that is a really good move. But here's the thing, sometimes that when you do something that benefits in one way, you sacrifice things in another way. Now, I want to go ahead and give a little other hot take. And these are just my opinions, and you're free to have your opinions. You are free to share this video. You're free to say, I think he's an idiot. I think he's brilliant, whatever. Agree, disagree. It's all good. I'm just talking about for the love of comics here. I'm not taking pot shots at anybody. I think that's completely petty and stupid in middle school, essentially, that I'm going to try and like rile up a bunch of people or whatever. I think that it's a workable plot point. Honey, I'm videoing. She can't hear me across the trailer, by the way. My wife's screaming for me. Can't pause this either, by the way. We're live. But anyway, just a second. I said I'm videoing. I'm live right now, dear.
Sorry.
I was going to text you that. I have no clue what that was about. That's fun stuff. I just did. She just said I should have just told her, whatever. Anyway, I think that it's a workable plot point. I'm not saying that I agree with it, because I think that it, as a writer, and I plan things out, I plot things out in my head and all that. It's not necessarily a direction that I would want to go ever, but I understand playing with the ideal. Let's just give them a little bit of grace here, more grace that maybe even due, right? That Spider-Man and Mary Jane's marriage was broken up. Okay, let's just pause here. I think that the fault with that is, the biggest fault with that is, and going back to Tom Brevoort, if you were to say that Tom Brevoort was more right the first time, which that's what I stand by, then that's an idiot decision. Idiot to the most extreme that idiot could possibly mean. Because Spider-Man, I can't ever imagine him feasibly doing that you've got an elderly, let's even just say decrepit, Aunt May, a enfeebled Aunt May, that's a good person, a nice person, in the theologically lacking world of Marvel Comics. We're just going to say that being a good person, we're not talking about the Judeo-Christian, do you have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ? And maybe she does. But we would presume that her character would probably go to heaven. I don't know where she's at spiritually or whatever, but she's not a scumbag. She is a sweetheart. She's super likable. All that. We're going to presume that this character is not lost, but that she loves the Lord, whatever. All that. She's a good person, salt of the earth. She's going to die and go to heaven, and she's not going to be old and feeble anymore, right? Um, so she's gonna die um, relatively soon, and he makes a deal with Mephisto, like the devil, um, to end his fruitful marriage with Mary Jane Watson Parker, the love of his life, um, to keep his elderly, even what is she suffering? Aunt May that he loves so much. Really and truly, let's say it's like real life. There's people that die that you love, and they're still kind of with you. I don't want to be all weird and anything, but they're still they leave a mark on your life a lot of times. They'll kind of leave a light behind and everything. And being a Christian, that I'm a preacher and everything. Um, I mean, I believe I'm going to see a lot of these people again. Um, I know how their lives ended. I know what their lives were, and I'm looking forward to seeing them again in heaven. Uh, so I mean, there's all of that. It would seem weird and I mean criminal in some sense not to even explore that, pathetic even, but that you can explore the mysticism, dark art stuff of Doctor Strange or Victor Von Doom and all, and they do. I heard a writer talking about Doctor Strange that went ahead and did this. And by the way, I agree with him. Um, and he was going to write for Stephen Strange. Now, theologically, I just want to tell you that you're forbidden to do all this dark arts magic stuff. There's no such thing as a Christian witch. Don't deceive yourself. There's no such thing as a Christian witch. It's magic and all this stuff. Real. I honestly believe that it is. Yeah, I think you open up different doors to stuff, and I think that people that are in that realm that would say that it's not, they think that you're a fool and they're trying to deceive you. There's no real literal devil. Yeah, there is. Um, you see his handiwork all the time. But I was hearing this dude that was talking about writing Doctor Strange, and he said, I thought, I don't know anything about the occult sciences. I don't know anything about magic. We're talking about going to like an occult bookstore and all that. So he went into some occult bookstore, so they're burning incense and they've got pentagrams all over the place, and all that type of stuff. Just I'm trying to paint the picture. You feel like Barnabas Collins is going to walk out somewhere and the guy says, I'm just starting, I'm new, I need some books on this. And he said this was an author or a writer in comics, in Marvel Comics. He said, and he read them all, and then he's like, I understand how Doctor Strange's magical mindset would work. So he applied real dark arts sciences to that. And so is Alan Moore, who's into that type of thing. That's his thing. I mean, he's written like magic books for beginners and worshiping pagan idols and and all that stuff. I agree with him. You cannot sincerely write the character of Doctor Strange without, a bunch of witchy sorcerer type stuff and knowing how that would be. A lot of people come to me, I'm not just I'm so well read, and I mean like the dark arts sciences and occult and criminology and I mean just like crazy ahead of you. You can't even teach me anything hardly, like theology. It's nuts. Like a normal person, it's I'm on some stupid college level, and you get so many incompetent preachers. It's sad. God bless those of you that keep pressing forward and learning and not keeping it in park. But yeah, if I was writing Doctor Strange, not something that I'm looking to do, but if I was writing Doctor Strange, I mean, I would have the knights of the the golden, all that. stuff going on and everything. I would have certain colors of candles and them being lit, and you're wearing certain raiments, and it's at a certain time of day, and there's certain cycles, and at this kind of the moon, it opens up for this sort of thing. You know, read some grimoires and Knights of the Golden Dawn. And I was thinking to myself, it's like, I don't want to say Knights of the Golden Circle because that's a Civil War different thing. I'm thinking, what is that word in there? Dawn, Knights of the Golden Dawn, DAWN. That all of that stuff goes with. So I would have that type of thing because it's ceremonial magic. It really involves a lot of stuff. It's not just like the easy abracadabra sleight of hand sort of thing, but it takes a lot of time. Have you ever watched the movie A Dark Song? That involves ceremonial magic. It's like rated R. It's a pretty dark movie, but it's very rigorous and all that. And the dude that I heard talking about that recommended it, it was a necromancer. I mean, like in real life. And you know, he had an occult podcast, and he would talk to people that were heavily into that, had a large viewership and whatnot. You know, I don't just know the abundance of things that I know from you know, listening to like preacher type people or whatever, but I mean, you listen to like actual witch people, but you're like all collegey and cerebral or whatever. And so, I mean, you know, I can think, well, the Bible says this and this and this because I mean, it's written on the tablet of my heart. I know it, and I know it well. But yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff. This isn't about me going into like Psalm 82 and other gods, and you know, you say you're gods, but you'll die as men, and talking about the pantheon and all that, because I could totally preach and go into an array of stuff like that that most don't even go into. And but yeah, the gods of Egypt, their principalities, all that. The Apostle Paul talked about that. All kinds of stuff. Anyway, I just wanted to hop on here for that note and say that I believe that Tom Brevoort was correct. Let me just change the subject for a minute, and y'all can just go ahead and you can holler if there's things that you'd want to hear me talk about or whatnot. I don't even know how many people that I would have on a live feed for this, but this will get shared maybe, and maybe some will see it, and we'll see how it goes. But I just felt like going on for a rant, and I'm not losing anything. This isn't taking anything away from me, unless it is, because Victoria was just snapping at me. But we'll find out. Hey, I just came out in a new book. I had a short story that was republished. This is Tumble Bleed, and it is Western horror stories. This is put out by Texas AuthorCon. Texas AuthorCon is absolutely fantastic. So many wonderful people are involved with this big author convention. Like a lot of you probably already know, before I was writing comic books, you know, my first year was last year, 2024, put out 5 different books in 1 year. That's competence. Five different books. If you say you're going to do it, do it. In 1 year, 4 of which are still available, because the incompetent part is finding out later that one of those was trademarked. I looked, is it copywritten? No, it's trademarked, Zorro. So, you know, that one's not available anymore. You know, I can't sell it. I could send it to you for free, but I can't sell it. But yeah, anyway, before that, I was writing books, and I was writing Western horror. Staggeringly, people go up to you and ask I mean, it sounds remedial, right? What is Western horror? Because you've got this, like, I don't know. It sounds weird to me. It's almost like a defective kind of thinking, because people talk about like Eastern and Western and all that. When I say Western, I mean, you know, like giddy up, get along, little doggies, like the old West, the 1900s cowboys people. That era, that time and period, usually within the United States of America, but it can be other places. But basically, like cowboy movie Western. So Western horror is a subset of the subgenre Weird West, which is a subgenre of Western, right? So there's a lot of stuff. So I mean, I've written about all kinds of Civil War violent stuff. There's people that have werewolves and whatnot in them. There's a bunch of comics out like that. Mike Barron has did a few Bronze Star things. He's coming out with a second Bronze Star book here pretty soon. I saw some pictures of that. Looked great. I just got some from Les Gardner that he had that was a werewolf Western thing. My stuff is way darker than that. Like, give other authors nightmares. There's some really good ones, by the way, other authors that I like, and a bunch of them, a bunch are in this book. I will just go ahead and tell you that this book was edited by Merrill David, who has been nothing but amazing to me. It's being made into an audiobook on Audible. He's did 2 other anthologies, and short stories by me have been printed in them both, whether they are a reprint of another short story or an original written for that. They're there. They're in it. This book has in it the following authors. Perhaps you've heard of them, and if you haven't, you may want to. I know these people: Corey Andrews, Christine Morgan. There I am. I'm the third story in it. B.L. Blankenship. I'll say a little bit about what my story is without like giving all the details. James H. Longmore, Chris Mullen, Dan Hink, who's awesome, and I did an interview with. He has a podcast and everything. Super nice guy. Eric Butler, John Steffens, Reverend Dare Cloud. That's what he's going by now. I love you, Chad. Megan Stockton, Holly Ray Garcia, Merrill David, of course, Aaron Lebold, Paul Avery Tyndall, Wiley Young. Wiley Young, I've not read the story that he has yet, but Wiley Young, in the last book that I read, because people were sounding off about whose stories were their best, I was like, his story to me, just the way that he wrote, it was like poetry. It was like dripping with like word porn. It was like so poetic and so awesome the way that he had like composed this story, that it was just like sweet, beautiful music to me. Wiley Young, the man can write. Okay. Matt has that Michelli, and finally, last but certainly not least, the amazing Candace Nola. I met Candace for the first time when we were at Scares That Care. She's absolutely great. Her daughter was absolutely lovely, wonderful people. So many of these people I've talked to, I've been around. The horror community is just the nicest people you'd ever want to meet. I've had a bunch of dealings with them, and they have been so good to me. I've had a lot of good stuff go on with the comic book community, by the way. So many people that are super nice, that welcome you, that embrace you. But I love this indie horror crowd. Check that out again. That is Tumble Bleed. Head Blown, and then Head Blown 2, that's TOO, are the other anthologies that this dude Merrill has went ahead and put my stuff in. I'm in a few more anthologies. The ones that I didn't publish, the other one is the monster fight at the OK Corral, and that's cool too. But yeah, then I have like what is it, 2 or 3 that I did, and then I've written novels and short stories. I have a collection, all kinds of stuff. You can find that on my, am I pointing the right way? I'm not pointing the right way. Right up there on my Amazon page, you can find all of those books. You can find all of the comics that I currently have available. Whole bunch of stuff going on. I'm excited to announce, and I've talked about it for about a year, because I think that that's what you want to do. You want to tell people like right when it's going to happen, or else they'll forget. But I hope to build up the hype. So I'm hoping that it's building up the hype with you. And here's the thing. I believe in being honest about stuff. Because if you're going to go and watch a movie, or if you're going to go and get a book, you don't want to think that it's one thing and then turn around and then it's another. Okay. My Hellfire series is being worked on right now. The first 2 issues and the annual, which is essentially the 6th issue, are pretty well print ready. There is a issue 3 and issue 4 and issue 5. Every single one of these 6 books are flip books. And people tell me today, these kids Tell me today, right? They all aren't all kids, but they're like, I don't know what a flip book is. A flip book is where it's a comic on this side, like normal, and then when you flip it over, like print it upside down, is another comic, and you turn it through and you read that other comic, right? And then I'll have a page that says, for another great story, close this book and flip it over to the other side. So there's an A side and a B side. So there ain't no back cover. There's a front cover on both sides for the comic or the mini comic or whatever that's in there. After each of my comics, I will have a short prose story, emphasis on like short, like 6 pages or something, a short prose story. I will have bonus content in it. I will have fan art in it. You know, you've got like Inktober and Spawnuary and all that, and I get it, right? That if I draw a popular Marvel character, if I draw a popular DC character, if I draw a popular Image Comics character, because they're popular, because they already have an entrenched fan base and following, that it's going to get a lot of views and maybe even land me a job with one of these companies. And that's all true. But what else is true is when you have an independent creator who is really trying hard, like up to his eyeballs in having 6 different comics produced for a series, for a season of that series, that if it makes enough money will substantiate making more of those. You know that that person would love to have more fan art so I can shamelessly use it to promote the project, to say that you're the one that did the fan art every single time that I show it because I'm beholden to you forever for making that fan art. And then we'll print it in the book and we'll have you credited for the fan art. And let me just talk to y'all about the way that I am. We'll send you a free copy of that book because you've got a piece of art in that book. I'll write you a letter. I'll say thank you, whatever. But you know, I want it to feel like it's worth it to you. Because why would you want to do something that's not worth it to you? That's how I am. There's things that I'll do for cheap. There's things that I'll do for free. You know, in life in general. But I have to want to do it, and I have to feel like it's worth it to me to do it. Nobody likes to feel like they're being used. Nobody likes to feel like they're being taken advantage of, and I would never want somebody to feel that way. I know that old Eric July, he used to have the show For Canon's Sake, and he would talk about how canon matters, right? I believe that overall. I mean, I just, you know, if I don't like something, I just, you know, just don't read it. My comic collection is like a rotating door, sort of. I'll get stuff, I'll try it out, and I'll think, do I want to keep this or do I want to trade this in for a store credit for something that I would rather have more? And that happens quite often. In fact, yesterday I just went to McKAY'S and I was aggravated. Do you know why I was aggravated? McKay's up in Knoxville for the longest little while here, they had these comics behind glass, right? And they had them like priced pretty high, overpriced. A lot of them were. There were some that it was like it was kind of okay, but I mean, like overpriced. Um, if you were paying money, but if you were using like trade credits, it's like, well, you know, that suddenly it's not that bad, right? And there's a lot of stuff that I needed to get rid of, books, CDs, um, you know, some comics that I got that I thought, hey, I'll try this out. You know, I got them cheap or whatever, and I went ahead and it had went really well for me the first several times, like really stupid well. I felt like they would take some of the stuff and they would say, "Do you want the stuff that we didn't take?" And I would find like the majority of the stuff they didn't take, and then I would just go down to like a pawn shop and I would get more money for that stuff that I thought it's just taking up space because I'm a minimalist. Um, and so I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to do that, right? And so I got one of their Phantom Stranger comics that they had. The 1960s run, that's season 2. Phantom Stranger number 2 I got. And they had several of the other ones, like the early ones after that, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. And I was like, man, um, I was going through this big back and forth. And I'm like, I really want to get my hands on some more of those comics. So I brought in some stuff, and I'm not going to say what the stuff is, but I'm going to say that it was really good stuff. Really good stuff. But it's like, I don't mind to offload of this. Some of it was like special edition stuff and all that. And I thought I'm going to get like $30 for trade, like 30 some dollars for trade for this. What is it, like 6 books or something that I put in. I don't care to tell you that like one of them was like Batman Damned. So like the Knoxville place has that now. And I don't know how much they're turning around and selling it for. But I got like $12 for the stuff that I thought I was going to get 30 for. And it's like that just, the story gets worse. Okay. Because I'm like, I'm going to have let's just be real. They had $40 on the cover. I thought if I could like accrue, because I already had like a trade credit. If I could accrue like $40 of trade credit, I'll just get that number 3 one, and then I can sleep a whole lot easier. So it'll stop like eating away at me. Number 3 through 19, the covers were made by Neil Adams, incidentally. So I'm going to go in there and I'm going to do that. Right? Wrong. As I handed it to them, and as I walked across the store and went to the thing, to look for them in the glass case, the comics weren't there, and panic sets in. And I go walking around all through the glass cases, and it's not there. So then I go dashing over to where you like ring the bell, ring, 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 and the lady comes up, and I'm like, "Where are your comics at?" And she's like, "Oh, they've all been moved upstairs." And so, so I go upstairs, right? I make this man dash upstairs, and I do like how McKAY'S has their comics laid out. There's some stores that do it this nice. They've got like a whole lot of them where they have like a logo of the sticker and it says that they're there. They also have color coded boxes. So if they're red, say it with me, they're Marvel. If they're blue, they're DC. And then they've got like another color. It's like, pink or something. And it's all the other stuff. Well, when you go down to one of the rows, they've got like the retro comics, and it's where those Phantom Stranger would have been. Somebody was asking me, do you read comics to read them, or are you they didn't say, are you like Sticky Goose? But do you read them to like collect them? Because he admittedly says that he does, even though I think that he also likes to read them, but he'll be looking at like what the value of it is. Again, I'm the dude that wore PF Flyers instead of Converse, right? So I mean, when I say that I like Phantom Stranger, he's kind of a niche character. So in the New 52, and that's where I first got into reading him, it made me like him. In fact, and this will probably like make every Constantine fan say, I ain't with you, man. It was my favorite rendition of Constantine. I don't like how they have the esoteric nerd speak and the Hellblazer books, but so I went ahead and I got that Phantom Stranger, all the New 52, which I'm only lacking issue 17, lest you wonder, of that, and then I'll have them all. But I have read them, and so I just had to jump over that. The first half of it is fantastic. It's really nice, and then the second half, it's kind of like Death Note. It's kind of like this isn't as good, but then they wrap it up really nicely at the end, tie a bow around that thing so it works out. The first half of it is him, it's dealing with him. The second half of it is kind of looping him in with other characters, and then you've got to get like Justice League Dark this issue, and Constantine this issue, and that issue over here and that issue over there. And I'm just not all about that. I didn't like the storylines when they had it where it was like forcibly tied in. It wasn't just his own story that so and so makes a cameo in. It was part of a bigger overlying arc. Forever Evil and everything was going on at that time. All of those things were going on, and it just doesn't do it as much for me, and it's almost back to the Wolverine and Spider-Man, who Tom Brevoort, in his wisdom, said they would never join the Avengers. But then Joe Quesada is like, yes, but from a marketing perspective, we need to cram it down everybody's throat because we know that they'll just go ahead and buy this. So, from a marketing perspective, DC Comics would say, hey, people are going to buy these other books that they otherwise, wouldn't look at out of the corner of their eye, maybe, because the Phantom Stranger is in them, and vice versa. I I'm just too avant-garde, man. I just don't roll like all that way, and I like the first half of it better, particularly, and I don't care to say what some of that's about. It's a big long thing. He is Judas Iscariot in this series. There's several acts that he does where he relinquishes a piece of silver from the 30 pieces of silver that he wears around his neck for his betrayal of Jesus Christ, who is formerly known as the Lamb, like the Lamb of God. In there, heaven is very universalist in this. They've got some Hindu and some Buddhist stuff and all that. When they finally show like the heavenscape in it, they've got hellscapes too, and they talk about that. It almost has a like what dreams will come kind of vibe to it. But yeah, anyway, the part that I think is cool is that the voice, who God, but he projects himself as a Scottish Terrier. Just that's his cognito on Earth. Um, the voice has told him that one of these guys that he was supposed to go to and things that he was supposed to do is a serial murder, and the man is going to murder his wife and children and then be exposed for the monster that he is. And in turn, where they're good people, they're all going to die and go to heaven, right? Well, instead of letting this man do this, the Phantom Stranger opposes the voice because, God knows and we don't. And yet, in complete pious idiocy, we want to argue with God. That's human. The Phantom Stranger, Judas Iscariot, um, decides that he's going to use his supernatural powers to strip every bit of love that this psychopath ever had for this woman and children, because it was there. The world didn't deserve them, and he was doing them a favor by killing them. That was his warped thinking. Just like these people that he had killed before were so evil that he killed them before, right? So the Phantom Stranger strips all of that from him, and he kind of goes to hell, but he kind of goes into this nothingness, and he becomes Soul Eater that serial murderer does. So he becomes a super villain from that, and the Phantom Stranger assumes his identity that he was as a man as his secret identity. So he can be this husband of this woman and kids that he now has this fatherly and marital love for, because he stole it from this psychopath. And so Sin Eater hates that all of the love, he has no love, because it was taken from him. So what every fiber of that existed has been ripped from him. So all he is pure hate and revenge and ugliness. So I mean, I was like, that is awesome. I like that. I thought that's like Dexter, like dark stuff. But it's a cool series, and bad things do happen. Basically, if Phantom Stranger would have listened to the voice of God, um, it would have been smoother. It would have been easier. The only thing that he really got out of it was that for the years that went on, that was like his paradise on earth, that he could live this fake life with this happy family where he could go to children's softball games and little dinners with his wife and all that, and that God allowed it. He allowed him to do that, just like God allows us to do stupid things, that you can do the wrong thing and that God can still use you, or whatever. That's reality. But that's what goes on in that series that I thought made it cool. And that's like the first half of that series. The first half of that series ends with him being wiped from existence, and then in the next issue, God brings him back from absolute annihilation, and that's where it kind of goes into this weirdness, and then you've got all these tie-ins with other characters and all that. But the first half of it is absolutely deliciously brilliant, and I liked it a lot. um yeah, so you've got a lot that goes on in comic book writing and different sorts of things. There was this young girl, by the way, that was down there, and it was cool because she was getting into comics, and again, she's new to it, and she was really looking for a young Justice. She said that she really loves Damian Wayne, and there's a lot of hate for Damian Wayne, but Damian Wayne's a kind of a cool character because all the other Robins, Batman had to teach them how to fight. He had to teach them how to be a warrior. Damian Wayne is the one that he has to teach how to be a human being and have compassion and act like a person, because Damian Wayne can bring it. Damian Wayne is like a killer. Damian Wayne has some cool stuff going on, but he's like a tough guy. He's got all the rage and all the anger, but he needs the loving father figure to teach him and to guide him and to nurture him and everything. He was handed a rough hand in life. So yeah, Damian Wayne's a cool character. There's some coolness going on with there, and I'm not gonna like break down too much of that. But no, these were just some of my thoughts that I feel like Tom Brevoort was right in that. I feel like Joe Quesada is right in some things as well too. Joe Quesada thing that I liked that he said that I just really feel for it, and I'm like, I am so with you, man. And yes, he marketably he did a thing that was strong in its moment for the Wolverine and Spider-Man thing. And yet later that mentality turns into the we can do anything with any character that we want, even if it's in complete contradiction to who that character is, which that's why 100% of the people that have any kind of rant against comics that like want to start flinging Molotov cocktails at them or whatever, it's because of that mentality that you feel that way, because you took this thing that I love and you ruined it. You didn't just make something new and do what you want with it. You took the thing that I loved and you bastardized it. Um, that's the issue. So what I do agree with that Joe Quesada thinks. Joe Quesada said that he had the polar opposite opinion of Todd McFarlane. Todd McFarlane has said a lot, like a lot, with like so much sincerity and conviction that somebody that's not like quick-witted would be like, that is so, man, I'm so down with that, but it's so stupid. um he's Todd McFarlane has said it like this, that he could get like William Shakespeare to write a comic, this just an unquestionably, doesn't matter who, an unquestionably brilliant, over the top genius, people lined up down the street, for them, author, writer, to write a comic and have his dog draw this crap comic that has this great writing, and nobody would read it. And then he says, but I could get my dog to write a comic, right? And have this great artist, say like a Jeff DeCal, say like an Adam Hughes, say like an Alex Ross, say like any of these people that can really draw. I mean, wow. And I could sell that comic. Um, honestly, it's probably more of a gray area, isn't it? Because so here's my deal. All right, Batman Damned, that I got it. I went ahead and I read it. The art is so fantastic that it's outrageous. It's outstanding. It is stand up and applaud, jump up and down, shake tambourines and battle bells and all that. It's like a cowbell thing that they do at like ball games and all that. I think that's like in Mississippi or whatever. air horns. Yeah, this is awesome, right? Go ahead and cheer and all that. But when you read this pile of dog crap comic that makes absolutely no sense, that's written in the same way as Hellblazer, that I've already said that I specifically do not like. If you like it, more power to you. It's just not my thing. There are certain authors that are like popular. Tom Clancy comes to mind, that I don't like his techno geek speak and his stuff, right? But he makes good video games and they turn into good movies or whatever. So it's just not my thing. It wasn't for me, okay? So when I read this thing, that's what makes me think I'm going to take this sucker down to McKAY'S. I went ahead. I already got it cheap off of Amazon because it had a slight tear on the what do you call the cover over the cover? The dust jacket. It had a slight tear on it. Nothing else wrong with it. It was in nice shape. That's fine. And this is the one, by the way, where the penis was shaded out that they did later. It's not the one that shows the full genitalia of Bruce Wayne. That's what it's famous for. But I heard it's all dark and gritty and everything. It's like, man, let me check this out. And like every single character in it, you hope that they got like their brains blown out the back of their head and that they died because they were all such trash, with the exclusion of Swamp Thing, because everybody likes Swamp Thing and he's just a sweetheart of it. I did like the fact that there was this bitter hatred with Constantine and Swamp Thing, and that there was this antagonism towards Swamp Thing and ugliness, which only makes John Constantine look more like a jerk, which John Constantine's character is a jerk. He is a drunken, like lush British sorcerer, piece of human garbage. Yeah, Swamp Thing is lovable. So I didn't like Zatanna in it. She's a popular character. I didn't like the rendition of her in it. The entire premise of the comic, I had the trade paperback, the hardcover. It's that Joker is dead, right? Joker's dead. Joker's dead. Joker's dead. How could this happen? Harley Quinn comes in there. She gets in the knockdown drag out with Batman. Joker's dead. Joker's dead. You know what happens at the end of it? Joker's not even dead. The whole thing is like an acid trip dream. It's pure trash, right? So the artwork of that makes you think, man, this appeals to me and I'm interested in it. Aaron Campbell, who is the artist for Hellblazer, which is the only reason that I picked up a Hellblazer. I thought I might like this. The artwork in it looks so solid. That was another book that I went ahead and I flipped because I don't like the way that it's written. I think it was like issue 4, Dead in America or whatever. It was a little while back. But the artwork is grand. He's going to be there at Heroes Con. I think so much of him as an artist, if he could just draw stuff for somebody that I like to read their writing, Dan Jurgens is going to be there. Make the deal. Dan Jurgens is awesome. Make the deal with somebody that I like their writing, that I can read their stuff. Dan Jurgens and Mike Perkins, their Batman First Night, it was 3 issues, limited series, was phenomenal. It was so good that every single award this year that doesn't have them, there's not a gray area for this. You're wrong. You're all wrong. I'm talking to you, Eisners. You're wrong. Yeah, there's some fine stuff that were let in there. It was so good. It was so outstanding that you failed. You need to give him some kind of honorary award. You need to get up and you need to talk about it on stage. I think sales wise, totally Scott Snyder, he's crushing it. There's way more attention on Absolute Batman than that. So I would get it if it won. It's they're chalk and cheese. They're apples and oranges. Scott Snyder's book is this apocalyptic world in a universe that's built by Darkseid, and First Night is a 1940s Batman with Tommy guns and with him driving the very first Batmobile, the red car, going around in it, fighting Frankenstein-esque monsters very noir, absolutely brilliant. The artwork is gorgeous. I'm talking like the level of gorgeous, stylistically a bit different, but the level of gorgeous that caused me to buy the Batman Damned, it's that good. Like the level that makes me want to buy like Alex Ross or Adam Hughes or whatever. Not just a good artist, but a great artist. Mike Perkins is fantastic. I didn't like it. I loved it. You know what comics I'm not going to flip? What comics I'm not planning on selling? Those. It's that good. It's available in a trade paperback. You can get it like that, or you can get all three. They have several different variant covers. They're the big like European magazine like style size. They're so good. DC, give both of those guys a raise. So good, wonderful, love it. The reason that I'm going to Heroes Con, what initially started that was when I saw Dan Jurgens was going to be there. He's written a lot of other stuff, emphasis on a lot. Um, One of the comics that stands out in my mind that is one of the best comics in the history of comics. I know I'm saying that, and it's like, and it's a bunch of them. But the Death of Superman, that was Dan Jurgens. He's did a lot of stuff. You can check him out, sci-fi things and all kinds of stuff. But yeah, those are my takes. A lot of respect for all of these guys. I'm not. There was a theologian, Dr. Michael Heiser, and Dr. Michael Heiser, he would say some things like fairly consistently. Brilliant, overwhelmingly brilliant guy. Naked Audio Bible Podcast, I think, is the name of the podcast that's still in existence that he did. Fantastic. If you're big into theology and the Bible and not like some remedial, I want like a children's lesson that's just basically getting preached to adults, but like I like to get into the depth of the Word of God. He's somebody that you would want to like listen to, that you would like. He's substantially like collegiately, literally collegiately. He was a real theologian. When you say theologian, he's what did he speak, like five different languages or six or seven different languages, like all the Near Eastern languages, it may have been more, and he could write them and all that Ugaritic and Greek and Hebrew and all that stuff. He knew that, like archaeologist crazy nut stuff, all that. Yeah. He would say there's two types of people: those who have graduated high school and those that are still in it. And unfortunately, you find a lot of people that substantially lack maturity, both in the indie comics sphere and maybe some, and that are professionally, or at least they may appear to, whether they do or not, because there's a lot of things that almost looks like look at me and all that. And I know, hey, I'm making a video, but it's not rage bait. It's not all these I'm calling somebody out and talking about this. I'm just telling you what my opinion is. You can like what you like. You don't suck if you like something that I think sucks. There's an audience for that. There's certain things that I like, certain things that other people like. As you get, I'm kind of a horror guy. I like a lot of stuff like that, and that kind of causes a thing with some church people that don't have it together. Because if you don't think that there's like horrific elements in the Bible, then there's something wrong with your imagination. There's a wall up, just like I can't hear harmony. You are substantially lacking not to know that when like Saul goes to the witch of Endor, when David is having to collect all these foreskins of Philistines, when Samson is doing pretty well everything in the life of Samson, when you're reading all of these graphically violent stories in the Bible, when there's a mighty man of David that killed a lion in the snow. I'm an artist. I can picture it like it's on like a cinematic screen. When the prophet of God came out and he called the king out, and his hand became all rigid and he had to speak for it to become all normal, and some people were trying to coerce him into staying into the town, but he said, no, I'm not allowed to eat here, nor to come back the same way, because God Almighty told me not to. And then an old man prophet lies and says, the Lord changed his mind, come to my house. And then God speaks to the guy and says, you're going to die. And as he rides out of town, a lion knocks him off of his ass, his donkey, It knocks him off of it, and his dead body is laying there, not eaten, but just dead in between the lion and the donkey and all that. If you don't think that there's like horror elements in that, the wayfaring stranger that gave his concubine to the there's a like a more current recent translation that calls them sex perverts, that were there in a town. They were Benjamites. They were deranged Jewish people, and that they raped her brutally and violently until the day. And as the sun was coming up over the horizon, she staggered, bruised and bleeding to the doorpost, and her hand just brushed up against the door, and she fell dead. And the man took her corpse and he cut it into 12 different pieces. Figure that out in your head how that works. And took a hacksaw or whatever and cut her into 12 different pieces. And he had a courier take those each to the tribe of Judah, I guess, with the message that this is what these pieces of garbage have did to her. She needs to be avenged. That's when there was like justice in the law, and it turns into a bloodbath of a battle. That's the way the book of Judges ends. That's after the story of Samson. And if you're like, what does that have to do with anything? Is that just gratuitous? Because you're smart enough to know that it's not. You're asking the question. No, it's to tell you about the tribe of Benjamin and why they weren't allowed to have any of the Israeli women after that. That there's always redemption with the Lord. That King Saul was a Benjamite. So was Saul of Tarshish, the Apostle Paul in the New Testament. They both came from the tribe of Benjamin. But yeah, you have so much stuff that's like that. I think that canon, that lore, that continuity, and it doesn't matter if it's real life or it doesn't matter if it's fiction. I think that they matter. The people that make the ultra popular series, The Chosen, write in things that Jesus did not necessarily say, that Jesus did not necessarily do. But what they say, that they sit back and intelligibly asks themselves, is it within the realm of probability, within possibility? A probability would be the better word for it to happen. Is it possible? Well, anything is possible. That's the comeback, right? But is it probable? If you knew me and you heard a story about me and you really knew me and you heard a story about me, you would think, well, that's totally in character for him. Or you might think, well, I just don't believe that because he's just not that way. And the same is true with Kal-El, Clark Kent, Superman, Bruce Wayne, Batman, Peter Parker, Spider-Man, whoever. The same Al Simmons, Spawn. I mean, I could go all day. The same thing is true with any of those fictitious characters as it is with real characters. If they have an established canon, an established lore, that something either fits or something doesn't. So once again, Tom Brevoort, a man that gets attacked way too often, and then not congratulated when he does something good or whatever. He was right twice, but I believe that he was right the most when he said that these characters would never do this because it stands against the very fabric of who they are. I think that if you don't get that, and if you say that you're a writer, if you say that you're a creator, if you have anything to do with the creation of characters, then you suck so hard that you should sell vacuums. This is B.L. Blankenship. Those are my thoughts. Share it, comment on it, talk about it, ignore it, whatever. I did it. It's out there.